On Juggalos, Juggalettes, and bitches I ain't met yet. What's going on, everyone? Give everybody a minute. Get in here. All right, we got one person up in the chat. Here. All right. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the CherryPie Show. We are late because that is how I roll. But you're here. You're home. What's up? What's up, Chipper Nightshade? Whoop, whoop. All right, guys. So tonight we've got a really awesome stream, mainly because we haven't been here in a while. Yeah, it's been like 2 months posted anything. So to you guys that are here, showing up in the chat, hanging out, love y'all. So tonight we're going to have a very special night. So get into your jammies, get comfortable, because we are going to have a read-along. Yes, a read-along of a book. Yes, Juggalos can read, believe it or not. All right. We've got 4 folks up in here. So we'll get right into it. This book I purchased at the gathering. It was one of my prized possessions that I had acquired. And on top of acquiring it, the rude boy to CherryPie. Yeah, this is something that my grandkids will hopefully not throw into a box and say, yeah, grandma was a fucking weirdo. And we weren't really sure what was wrong with her. Yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get right into this book. This book was written. This was written by Mike Shepard for Rude Boy. Obviously, had all of his input and all the cool things that he wanted to add into it. It's an amazing book. It reads well, and I thought you guys would really enjoy it. You know, something for the Juggalos, because the Juggalos, we need something. You know, we miss our family when we're not gathering. CherryPie is back. Rocky Rob, what's up? Whoop whoop. So if you are cozied up, you are in your jammies, probably in a shitter, whatever you're doing, go ahead, get comfortable, because we're going to start reading. So the book starts off like any other book. My Life, the Funhouse. Rudy Hill Story. And we're going to go ahead. All right. My Life, the Funhouse by Mike Shepard. I'm chilling in my bed, playing Pokemon. Yeah. All right. This book is actually quite long, so that's why we're going to do a series. We're just not going to chip away at 4 hours worth of reading, because we all have the attention span of a small gnat and a bright light. So we definitely don't want to be reading for 4 hours at a time. Also, CherryPie, can't do that anymore. Okay, so there was a foreword by Violent J himself of the Insane Posse, October 25th, 2021. The life of Rudy Hill, aka the Rude Boy, is just something Webster's English Dictionary cannot possibly summarize in only 8 to 10 paragraphs. I don't care if you're a Webster himself. All of 2.5 feet of him sitting on Michael Jackson's lap. Even 8 to 10 chapters is a task-worthy stretch. 8 to 10 books might not even include all the man's milestones so far. I mean, how do you even address his story on the back of the book? Rudy is primarily known as the world-renowned host of every imaginable type, from live TV to radio to parties of all sizes, live concerts of all types. He freaking hosts any He freak hosts any and all types of events, from podcasts to live contests, even programming a jukebox for everyone at the bar. Rudy's a born leader and the life of the night every night. Any night he chooses to be on any type of night you could possibly imagine. This man is very much at home when he's hosting the underground, super jam packed from an Isham the Unholy concert, who's doing his wicked shit classics at 1 a.m. on a Saturday night, and only hours later, early morning the next day, comfortably conducting a beautiful early Sunday service as an ordained pastor of a church. Rudy knows no possi- yeah, Rudy possibilities. Never mind that in my life never known another man who comes even close to accomplishing as many goals as Rudy has. If he sets his mind to it, back the fuck up, because any walls between him and that endeavor will be destroyed fast. I don't give a fuck what it is. He's going to kill it. He schools it all stupid silly. As simple as that. I'm not even exaggerating shit when I say Rudy's the most fascinating person I've ever known. Any room, any size, from the living room of a tour bus to a sold out stadium, Rudy takes command as soon as he arrives. And that's not always by choice. His personality just owns it. It's awesome to witness, like Prince. I'm telling the truth here. Once you know Rudy, you become almost like a fucking follower. It's funny and it's crazy. But thankfully, he has no false prophet. You can't help but listen or watch him freak the shit out of this world. He's like Prince in that stance. You just feel you're catching everything important and essential in order for a good time by keeping your attention on Rudy. And yet, the question remains, which carrier is he most known for? Yeah. And that was the foreword from Violent J for this book. So if that doesn't tell you that his book is fire, I don't know what the fuck can. So we'll get right into the special note to the readers. Welcome to Rudy's Funhouse. I'd like to take a moment and explain the exact nature of this book because it is unlike anything you've ever read before. It's true. It is unlike anything you've ever read. I guess the name itself can be a little foretelling as to the nature of this book, but I've decided to add this note to explain further about what exactly you're holding in your hands. This book is actually a funhouse and not a book at all. There are no chapters in this book, only a series of doors that lead to different portions of Rudy's life. No two doors are really the same, and it can be days apart or literally decades, depending on what door you choose to enter. This design was manifested after I spent almost a year with Rude Boy and learning the world in which he calls home. At first, I didn't understand the complexities of Rudy's life. I only knew certain things to be true. He was a psychopathic records and JCW legend in his own right, and had been with the Insane Clown Posse, Inner City Posse, before they were actually a world renowned movement, a group, a niche in society. I knew Rudy from Dog Beats and would eventually meet him in the mid 90s for a few minutes. I knew that Rudy had a relationship with wrestling, although I had no idea how deep those colors ran when it came to his love for the sport and promotion of the lifestyle. Obviously, I had been pretty privy when it came to his CRP radio life during the course of writing Forever in the Jets, but my knowledge was limited in that respect. Beyond these items, the rude boy was a mystery to me in many terms of hard data and I had seen him at the first gathering of the Juggalos, introducing would be 20 some years later, or I waltzed into his life on a chance encounter. In the coming pages, I will get into that more, but for now, the structure of the Funhouse is what I want to drive home for everyone who finds themselves reading these very words. Rudy's life is like an onion, with layers after layers of experiences, friendships, troubles, good times, and everything in between. To write a book that would be able to chronicle this onion would be very difficult and most likely confusing, not to mention infinite. So I had to come up with a different approach to the book, was slowly developing over the year. To be honest, I wasn't really sure how I was going to do it because the more I drifted into Rudy's life and into his world, the complex nature of his existence became more and more apparent to a point where I had a nervous breakdown for several days when the vision I needed was late showing up. I studied my notes and the pictures and was taken back by the many winding streets and avenues that seemed to lead to and from the man. I wanted to strike a tone that was true and correct, and it would not come to me. This uncertainty caused me great amounts of anxiety, and all the while, the mountain just kept getting bigger and bigger. The original things I knew about Rudy were literally just a few trees in a vast forest that makes up the Rude Boy. I would push farther in, looking for the end of the forest, but over every hill, quote unquote, some amazing sections, but also some very dark and dangerous portions as well. As the weeks passed, I continued to record more inclusions for the book and puzzled at how it might all fit together. I had millions of moving pieces, with some connected in blood and toil, with others that seemed to have no connection whatsoever to any parts of my story. My God, I thought, I needed to make sense of it all and get the book together. There comes a certain point in book creation where the original intention can be eclipsed by continuous tinkering with the body of work. If I didn't find a path forward soon, I would be buried by the project and driven half mad. I'm already half crazy, so to lose another half of my mind at this point would have been the end of me. Divine intervention was needed, or maybe my thinking just had to change slightly. As I got to be good friends with Rudy and allowed to see past the curtain, I noticed something very familiar. Rudy's life was governed by many different directions and places, but he always seemed to keep everything straight. I would watch him shift from radio to wrestling, to promotions to entertaining, to partying to interviewing, and so on in a particular fashion started to look familiar to me. I knew the story, maybe not all of the particulars, but I knew what multitasking compartmentalization life looked like. How, you might ask? I live life in a similar fashion. Although my compartments might not look quite like Rudy's or have the same twists and turns, I nevertheless am a serial compartmentalizer. I've done it my whole life. in one form or another. Like Rudy, I have the ability to start lots of different things that may not necessarily intersect or even touch life. I have lots of things that bring me joy that really having nothing to do with others and can, at times, be on a totally different spectrum altogether. I love underground rap from Detroit, but can also enjoy a nice trip to the library to read about history. I like to smoke, although I know they will kill me one day if I don't quit. I appreciate the general order of society, but also despise authority. I enjoy spending money, but I don't give a shit about it at times. I like to look good, yet I bum. I think drugs are bad, but have no problem with sports in theory, but I refuse to watch or support them. I complain about shit that I don't always care about. I hate TV, but I will watch the same horror movie 50 times in a row, only to complain that I've already seen the title. I'm an alcoholic, but sometimes I give myself permission to fuck up to the highest order. On some days, no two things are really quite the same, and I'm sure that drives my family crazy. I don't mean any harm. I only want the best for everyone, even when I'm collapsing on myself for a general disregard of self care. How can I be all these things and many more at once? I'm not sure, but I know this. Rudy and I are cut from the same material. Obviously, things I've listed in general are general, but the idea is crystal clear to me. We both have complex lives with extreme highs and lows, chalked in everything else you could possibly come up with. And still there is more to see. I'm an endless road, and so is Rude Boy. You can try to push through the forest or take the road to the end of the line, but most likely you would simply run out of gas or die trying to find the end. It's not a brag or a boast, just a simple fact. Trying to figure out people who compartmentalize their lives can be dangerous, toxic, scary, unpleasant. So I recommend the best thing to do is to just look from afar and applaud when the shit is going right and offer a little shelter and compassion when the times are dark. So, with all that in mind, the answer to my ever growing and mutated problem suddenly hit me like a sniper's bullet from 2,000 yards away. This is exactly the thought that exploded in my head as the bullet shattered my dome. The rude boy's life is literally like a funhouse. What is a funhouse? A place, shape, or form. There could be scary shit behind one door, a confusion and sadness after that. A funhouse is really the only type of thing that seems to fit a bunch of ideas or feelings together under one roof. Here's the fun. Usually does so at their own risk, decision, with the unknown waiting for them. Yeah, with the unknown waiting for them just beyond the field of vision. The answer to my problem was staring back at me in the recesses of my mind. A funhouse, exactly the thing I was looking for a multitude of reasons, for by which now are probably becoming apparent to the reader as well. This was the fix I was looking for. It was my path forward. And you know what? The idea really worked well when I began to play it out in my mind. Within a day or so, I was building this funhouse from materials that I had gathered while following Rudy around for a year, having been an active participant in his world. It was genius. When I finally got to sit down with the Rude Boy and DJ Carlito, they loved the idea as well. It made sense. Hell, it made perfect fucking sense. With their blessing, I started to gather up the foundational materials, the odds and ends, and literally any resin that had been left behind during my time with these cats over the last year. Once I had the building plan on my hands, everything else dropped into place. It was like it had always been there. The world of IBW, Rocks TV, Cruise Navarro, and the world of live music and events all went easily behind each door. I had articles, pictures, stories, legends, everything else would everything else I would need to build Rudy's funhouse. And as I added each door, it became more apparent that it had become an amazing idea sent from a sniper. Who is he? The sniper with the bullet idea that pierced my dome. I think I know, and although I won't say his name, you could say this entity is divine in nature. I've given up fighting the universe or even trying to know why things happen. If the energy source wants you to do something, you will know. We can leave it at that. So, what you have on your hands is not a book at all, just a very odd shaped building with lots of doors leading to places throughout the years, and there are no real rules other than to experience a different room of Rudy's life. What you could find makes could make you cry or laugh part of the fun. I won't give away too much at this point, except the first door offers a different experience than the second floor. Maybe. There's rumors. Oh, sorry, lost my place. There are rumors that an addict exists somewhere in the funhouse, but to find that, you're going to have to work very hard, checking each and every door to locate it, if in fact it does exist at all. I would also like to add that included in this book are articles from Rocks TV and excerpts from Cruise Navarro that were completed during the making of this book. I felt they would be helpful for the reader to understand what running with the rude boy for a
Cheese
year.
wedge beverage box said S.
What happened? We got down to four people here. Um, Lost my place again. Yeah. Each article or excerpts were selected because Rudy's direct involvement with the coverage featured. He was there for the events, sometimes organizing the particular event, or we were road dodging it altogether. Sometimes he was just the captain in the shadows, making sure things were running smoothly or to his standards. There are no chance encounters in the funhouse. Capturing Rudy's essence at times can be difficult to explain, and the articles give the readers a very specific backdrop to chew on. On many occasions, the reader will find interviews with featured guests from articles following the narrative, which specifically pertain to their own personal relationships with Rudy Hill. Like Violent J expresses so eloquently, Rudy Hill is a rare breed, too crazy to live and too amazing to die. His interests and dealings are so unique and widespread in capturing the specific, turn the page, nature of Rudy in words is rather difficult, like grabbing a ghost. He is everything at times from a promoter, radio personality, host, producer, video director, political and neighborhood activist, father, wrestler, wrestling promoter, friend, loved one, and so on, times infinity. So, welcome to everyone who's purchased a ticket for this journey into the life and times of Rude Boy Hill. I wish you good luck within the walls of the Funhouse, and I may bump into you along the way. Sincerely, Mike Shepard, August 1st, 2021, 2:06 p.m. with a westward gaze. So, as you see, the book is going to be doors. It's actually not a book at all. It's going to be doors into the life of Rudy Hill. And the first place that we go, which is funny because it's not a door at all, but the first place we go is the Funhouse parking lot. And the Funhouse parking lot starts us off at May 17th, 1996. So we got a sound off of who we have here. Anybody here still? It's like, who's here? Do we got Rocky Rob? Do we got Chipper? Do we got Badass? Hey. All right. So next place we're going is we're going to the Funhouse parking lot. So sit back and enjoy. May 17th, 1996. There are some days that stick with us forever, and May 17th, 1996 is most certainly one of them. I was 16 years old and a firm supporter in the Detroit rap group, the Insane Clown Posse. I had been listening to the group for a better part of the previous 4 years, and I identified so strongly with the message of the Dark Carnival and the music that my identity was slowly transforming into what can only be described today as a juggalo. The term has become a household name, and almost anyone, from anywhere, will be able to conjure up some type of idea in their minds of who and what the term applies to. But back in the 90s, especially in the early to mid 90s, the term juggalo was a rather radical in nature. The definition was not so defined or easily nailed down as it is today, leaving room for lots of different interpretations and perspectives. The flexibility and loose association appealed to the kids coming up, who were not easily defined by one type of music or dress code. Kids excluded or without a social home. It was in these years that I truly was coming of age, figuring out who I was for the first time, and leaning into things that appealed to me. I had been introduced to the Dark Carnival in an interesting way when I came across a copy of Inner City Posse's first official release called Dog Beats. I had been at my cousin's house in Mount Moors around 1992 when I first laid eyes on the cassette. The cover was nothing like I'd ever seen before. As far as other rap tapes were concerned, that was. This cover had a striking image of a shirtless clown from around looked deranged and somewhat menacing, which was the complete opposite of what most clown imagery was back then. This clown looked like he might break into your house, steal your shit for laughs when you weren't home. It definitely left a lasting impression on me. In the upper left hand corner of the tape was a gesture marionette, running the strings attached to the letters ICP. The letters dripped with what appeared to be wet paint or blood streaks. Dog beats and a warning, explicit language, on the bottom of the tape only added more questions and intrigue. My date with destiny has begun, and although I didn't really understand, at 12 years old, what exactly this shit was all about, I was more willing to go down the rabbit hole for a closer look. I would eventually secure my own copy of Dog Beats, and I would listen to the tape repeatedly, trying to absorb the music and the sounds coming out of my beat up piece of shit boombox. Up until that point in my life, the music I had been listening to was certainly rap for the most part. I'd started off with generic West Coast greatest hits type tape, which had the song 6 in the Morning by Ice-T on the side that sucked less than the other. And I think we've all had mixtapes that they suck one side and the other side fire. Yeah. For the most part, this was the early hip hop and rap. And compared to today's standards, looking back now, the tracks were slow, basic, almost like slow motion compared to things made today. I wasn't exactly thrilled about most of the songs on the tape, but 6 in the Morning was a shot to my system, and that gangster type music grabbed a hold of me. This was around 1989 or so. By 1992, I had developed a taste for rap music. But once I encountered Dog Beats for the first time, everything changed permanently. Back in the early 90s, the pace of life was definitely different than today's hypersonic march forward. In those days, there was more time to analyze and take in whatever you were doing. There weren't a lot of distraction other than MTV or the radio. Most of the time sucked, and MTV was only available if you had cable or a black box. And a black box was a device for stealing cable, which my family eventually got a hold of. Rap was in a transition period. Although I didn't really understand it at the time, there was a massive shift from party music type vibe of the very earliest rap songs to a much more raw and hard hitting sound of gangster rap. Obviously, most groups and artists had a hand in that shift. But to me, the turn of the decade, NWA was really leading the change. Ice Cube, who would later leave NWA, went into overdrive producing West Coast gangster music altogether. And NWA alumni became the voice and sound of gangster rap for the rest of the decade and beyond. I was paying attention, although my parents didn't approve of the music or the imagery that was associated with gangster rap. I think it was partially due to the subject matter and also the profanity laced songs that seemed to be everywhere. I thought it was exciting and different compared to the industry standards for Caucasian kids of European descent at the time. There was a formula back then, and it basically was rap for the African Americans, rock was for Caucasians. There wasn't really any other way, and the template was set. But unbeknownst to the record industry and my parents across the country there was a new breed of listener from white community that fell in love with music, the styles of dress, and the culture of rap and hip hop. So, although I was a fan of West Coast and East Coast rap, I had never really been exposed to Michigan underground rap, which was really starting to heat up thanks to Esham, Kid Rock, Insane Clown Posse, to name a few. There were many others who had also had a hand in Detroit underground music scene. But these groups that I've mentioned would shape the music that I enjoyed for the next 30 years or so. Once Dog Beat floated into my world, I was captivated by it and had the time to really figure out what was going on. Even the record label was out of this world. It was listed on the tape, Psychopathic Records, and had an image of what looked like a dude with dreads running with a meat cleaver. I didn't know at that moment, but I would slowly pivot away from the national brand of rap and drift forever deeper into the local music. I remember reading the inside of the jacket of Dog Beats and studying every word. There was no computers, cell phones, or any high tech shit like that for distractions. It was just me and the tape. Towards the bottom of the credits and writing, it said, the ICP on the streets, and listed a bunch of colorful sounding names, nicknames for each person. The first line read, Jump Steady, Lay Low, and Rude Boy. I would sit in my bedroom and listen to the music, read the notes on the cassette, and think about it all in my head. For some reason, the name Rude Boy stuck out and caught my attention. Judging from the music on the tape and the imagery on the front, for these guys to be calling someone Rude Boy must have really meant that he was something else. A wild card, a straight up rude ass motherfucker. I never forgot the name or the rap group Inner City Posse. Within a very short amount of time, the Inner City Posse would change their name to the Insane Clown Posse and drop the album Carnival of Carnage, taking me along for the ride. By 1994, I had managed to acquire a Ringmaster shirt that was black and gold speckle. My parents didn't have the money to buy me that type of thing and wouldn't have it any other way because of the shit subject matter. It took a very long time to sock away $10 or so. I coupled this along with a joint that I had purchased off some kid in English class. Combined with the weed and the money, I was able to trade it for the shirt. The guy I got it from was a tall, lanky ass dude. So the shirt was like a fucking triple X shirt, which fit me as good as a parachute. The bottom of the shirt was well past my ridiculous at the time, but I didn't give a shit. I would sneak the shirt under a flannel, and when I got to school, I would dip my locker to proudly display my ICP shirt. In my mind, I was making the tag the walls in my school with the phrase Insane Clown Posse Bitch Boy with a Sharpie, markers every day. If you didn't know better, you might thought there was a bizarre, crazy gang forming up in the school, and if you didn't know about it, the music or their fans. Each day the janitors would take the graffiti down, and each day I would tag it back up on the lockers, walls, the cafeteria, and so it went. The janitors had their job, and I had mine. Money was tight, but I slowly began amassing a secret library of ICP tapes, CDs at my friend's house. If my parents found that shit, it would have been tossed out immediately. so keeping them somewhere off location seemed to be the best idea at the time. The kids in Clemford Street were definitely bumping Dog Beats, Carnival of Carnage, and Ringmaster on the daily. Tim J had a car with rims and some bumps and cruising around in his big G ride. Bumping sounds made me feel invincible. Obviously, we were not. Probably far from it at that time. But it was how I felt. Was small, and at that time, everyone, because they wanted to be, and took the music very seriously. We would spend days debating who was the best rapper, what each song really meant, pretty much whatever else our adolescent minds could conjure up. There may have been 10 real juggalos in the whole city at that time, and although we really didn't refer to ourselves as juggalos on the daily back then, that's what we really were by today's standards. The term, in its infancy at the time, things were still forming, but juggalo would be the word that would eventually describe us. It wasn't always easy or pretty. A lot of people who followed the formula of life, laid out cultural terms, did not like this new breed of kids running around bumping sounds, sagging pants, and talking shit. There was almost instant pushback from everywhere. The rock guys hated us, the jocks hated us, the preppy people hated us, the school administration hated us, and on it went. But it didn't matter. The pushback only hardened our resolve to celebrate this thing of ours and together. The die-hard fans, the artists of ICP and their crew forged on to what eventually would lead to the greatest victory that could ever be achieved in the music world, creating a genre or subculture for all time. 30 years later, the clowns and the supporters of the music won out through sheer determination, loyalty, and some hard fucking knocks. The system was bested, and I was there when it mattered the most. But without the diehard support, can anything take hold and live? What's up, Trailer Park? I remember May 17th, 1996 for many reasons. I'm glad to share them with you now. I had recently had that was the year I turned 16 years old and received my license. Back then, there wasn't all this bullshit graduated level driver's license shit like there is today. When you turned 16 and had completed a driver's training at high school, you had your pass to freedom, brother. There was no quit neither. I got my license on the 3rd, and just in the nick of time. I was going to meet some people on May 17th that I would come into contact with 24 years later and who I would share my time with a quarter century down the line. Did I know it at that time? Of course not. Life doesn't always reveal the course, direction, or reasons up front. But I do know this. Everything happened for a reason, and a time would eventually bear this out for me. I was 4 years into the Dark Carnival, and by 96, it was the only thing on my mind. I had ceased listening to the national stuff, and my sole focus was on what was bubbling out of Detroit. And in personal heaven. Located a few miles from my house, it had everything that was cool or mattered to me as far as the music was concerned. The best shit to be found by Doug Earp. Rest in peace. And then here you guys go. This is what the flyer looked like. Okay. Located on the west side of Flint at 5204 Corona Road, just west of Linden Road, Wyatt Earp Records was my gateway to the underground music and the culture. It basically served as a pre-internet stomping grounds for items that were otherwise unavailable to me. This was true financially as well as for the most part because I didn't have a job yet. But the important thing was that I could go to Wyatt Earp Records with my homeboy Wayne and at least see the possibilities for myself. True, much of the merchandise and the music was out of reach, but it didn't matter because I could still stand there for hours letting my eyes roll over the tapes, the clothes, regardless of being broke or not. When you don't have a lot of money or come from limited means, to be able to at least see the shit was the next best thing. I guess people would call it window shopping back then because, for the most part, all I could do was dream. But it was still a thrill to go into the shop and finger the goodness, if only for a moment. Doug was a really nice shop, would have that kind of deep connection to the music and the culture, but I didn't fully understand it at that time. I would stand at the front counter and peer into the glass, be there, standing behind the register, out too. He was never a dick about me being in the store and not purchasing much of anything, although. In fact, he would crack a big smile whenever I would mention ICP or their music and launch into a story about the clowns. He had an autographed 69-cent 2-liter Fago of cola on a small shelf by the register, and I would be in awe of the stories he would tell me about the shows and dealing with Violent J and Two Dope. The shop was going to be hosting ICP on the 17th, according to the flyer that I had, and I wasn't going to miss the opportunity to finally meet the Dark Carnival imprint that I had, and I wasn't going to miss the opportunity to finally meet the Dark Carnival in person. The day of the show, I just knew that I had to be there. There's been a lot that's passed since that day, but few things will never fade away. The first is that I managed to get Wyatt Earps with a few friends. I had on a riddle shirt that I was extremely proud of and wore the next to get signed. I wanted to bring something that showed that I had been down for more than a hot minute, and my homies did the same. In our hands that day was a copy of Dog Beats and also Two Dope's Fuck Off CD. But before all that mattered, we had to get there and park, which proved to be almost impossible that day. We were excited to be going to the in-store meet and greet, and we were bumping ICP the whole way. As we busted into the Corona Road from Linden, we could see off in the distance more traffic than usual. When we got closer, we observed that type of housing in the very back was completely overrun with a large mob of juggalos. The place was crawling with people, and just getting into the lot was almost impossible. The line consisted of all types of juggalos, some painted up, others in alternative skater type clothes, and still others all G'd out. The line consisted of about 3 people in width and stretched from the door of the record shop off in the distance. There was absolutely nowhere to park, so we inched our way into the housing units and parked off in the last inch of pavement available. There and not wanting to miss a thing, we quickly to get in the never-ending line of humanity. Looking back on the event now, we should have just sat in the car, smoked weed, drank beer until the line thinned out some. But I was young and felt the urgency and time weighing on me. We were extremely early, and it already felt like my chance to meet the clowns was slipping away. There was no way that we were going to be able to meet with everyone. There was no way they were going to be able to meet with everyone that showed up, and I didn't want to get turned away before I met my heroes. After an hour or so of waiting in line, seemed to be nothing seemed to be happening, but destiny was about to throw someone directly into my path who would later become a dear friend of 25 years. As I waited in line and thought about what I might say or do, once I got into the store, I noticed someone walking down the line. I remember specifically that it was this hardcore looking cat with a long sleeve jersey on, a bandana hanging low over his eyes, holding a 22-ounce bottle of beer and engaging with the kids in the crowd. I was about to meet the one and the only rude boy, Rudy Hill, for the first time. He was cocky, talked, laughed loudly, was mixing it up with the Juggalos. Someone spoke his name to a guy standing next to him and said, "That's Rude Boy." In Detroit, in Detroit second, bells started going off in my head. Oh, sorry. I got a pop up here. Let me get rid of it. There we go. Bells started going off in my head. I knew his name well. It had been the same name referenced in the Dog Beats notes. This was a bona fide member of the ICP on the streets. This was someone I had heard the Wicked Clowns reference in songs. This was fucking Rude Boy. Holy shit, I thought, and I tried to look cooler than what I was. In my mind, it started racing, trying to come up with something to say to this OG of ICP. Think, goddammit, think, I shouted to myself as he stopped a few feet away. Rude Boy was in full on Southwest mode and talking shit and enjoying every minute of it. Yeah, talking shit and enjoying every minute of it. He was quizzing Juggalos on their knowledge, and whenever someone would say something that he approved of, them a Joker's Wild sampler. As he gazed at the Juggalos, I fell into his line of vision. I'd love to say that we talked for an hour and became dope friends, but it wasn't like that. I was just another member of the line, and Rude Boy had his job to do. He was keeping the energy and the excitement going for the Juggalos, who had been waiting a long time, with more coming in. He handed the guy in front of me a sampler, took a swig of his beer, and continued to move down the line. My brief encounter was short lived, but somehow I felt a connection had been established. Maybe it was just in my mind, and maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, but somehow or way, not the end of the story. I can't describe in words really. Much like people at AA can't describe their spiritual awakening, but there was something that happened that day, and I was aware of it. Rudy kept moving in one direction, and I in another. But we would meet again, one day, 24 years later, on a cold night in the city. A few seconds later, a juggalo was hit by a car crossing the street to get the Wyatt Earp's parking lot. Seconds later, a juggalo was hit by a car crossing the street to get the Wyatt Earp's parking lot. In proper juggalo fashion, the guy stood up in the road, dusted himself off, and got in line. Juggalos didn't fuck around. Rude Boy on May 17th, 1996. Basically, what we did on that day, I'll never forget it, because Wyatt Earp was one of my favorite record stores that I had ever went to. Me and Joe Bruce, Violent J, ever, I saw this cassette. So I asked the gentleman behind the counter. I didn't know his name, but he was a really nice guy. Asked him what the tape was about. He said they were a group from Cleveland. So we bought it, popped it in, and it was Bone Thugs and Harmony. I'll never forget it. Thuggish, ruggish bone. So as we drove back to Detroit, bumping the music, we kept going back, started putting tapes on consignment there, ICP cassettes, and the next thing you know, he was calling us up saying, "We need another 100, you know." It was crazy. We were like, what's going on? So again, we tried to do things in Detroit weren't doing. We modeled the blueprint for moving forward off of Esham. Esham would be doing the record releases, doing these in stores where you would buy a copy of the album and get it autographed, say hi and take a picture. All that was cool stuff. So the first one we did was on at Hot Hits at the Greater Tour in Roseville. Just gonna stumble over that word because, and of course, it was the fun because Alex Abyss family owned it, and it was all about family. And the first time we did it, there was over 500 people in line. 500 kids in line, and we don't even have an official release because at that point we were just doing these karaoke things. We'd have dual cassettes and make them ourselves, photocopy the cover. Actually, yeah, photocopy the cover, and we had over 500 people. So then we got the real deal, Carnival of Carnage. Actually, Dog Beats was the first, but we didn't do in stores for that. We did some here and there, but I clearly remember because up until that point in time, we were taking Maxwell tapes and recording ourselves dubbed. And I remember Joe Bruce giving my brother John, because he still was in high school, like 15 of them, dog beat cassettes, and said, kids want it, but now we are charging. We were putting all of our money together so that we can make an official release. And that's what we did with Dog Beats. When we went to, oh, hell, what's the name? Chuck Miller, MIDI Studios in Warren on 9 Mile. Chuck Miller knew that we were just kids that didn't know anything, so he charged us an arm and a leg because he knew what he was doing. He asked, "Can I get you guys Kid Rock's producer Mike Clark for your next record?" And we were like, "Cool, whatever." We were riding this dog beats. And the same thing was. The crew was John Kickjazz, Shaggy Two Dope, and Violent J. However, there was no makeup. They were just three thugs from Detroit doing rap shows. And the whole time they were just like blended in. There was nothing that was standing out. I remember we did a show with Isham at the Ritz during the Dog Beats time, and ICP did their set with these clown wigs, and they were dancing, and people responded to it. Those are the clowns. Cool. So Isham comes out being pushed in a casket, and they stand up the casket, open it up, and there he is standing there, all scary and shit. We watched that. Again, he had had the blueprint for all of it. We watched and remembered Drew Bruce a couple of months later. Man, I've got great news. We are changing the name of the group from Inner City Posse to the Insane Clown Posse. We're the Wicked Clowns. It came to me, and we're going to go with it. We're going to go with it. And I can't lie. I won't lie. I'm a hip hop aficionado. I'm an old school hip hop. And I was like, that's the stupidest shit I've ever heard. Clowns rapping? Clowns? And at that time, Isham had a release called Homie Don't Play With That, with face paint on, and it was more inspiration for ICP. But when I listened to it, the product, visually, I couldn't understand it. Because I'm from the days of Chuck D and Kurt Blow, Africa Bambaataa, and all them. So I couldn't understand the concept. Like, what are you talking about? I used to go to hip hop shows where there would be like a guy on stage with a mic, and that was it. You got turntables, and that was it. There was no theatrics behind it. And that was the genius part about it. Now, there were the theatrics of the Insane Clown Posse. And I remember the day so clear. Not the entire day, but the actual event. I remember we went up to Flint, and this is the day of the in store Wyatt Earp records. We got a motel room, a cheap little spot, maybe $20 or so for a couple of hours. And we were like, all right, man, do you think that anyone is actually going to be there? We were like, I don't know. I don't know. So Alex is like, I'm going to take a drive by. Then I will come and I'll tell you. Those were the days before cell phones. So boom. And he comes back and he's like, what the fuck? And oh, the thing is, the thing is that Alex liked to bullshit sometimes. Proportion. So we were like, there must be like 100 kids. All right, cool. So we will be done in like an hour. Rude boy laughs. And we get there, and I just remember driving down the highway and seeing this line of people. I was like, what's going on over there? As we got closer, I was like, holy shit, this is us. Here we go. And I remember just pulling up to this roar of people being happy, man, seeing smiles everywhere. And that just wasn't in Flint. It was happening everywhere we did these. And it felt good because we were so unwanted, especially in our own hood. And now, wow, there's these strangers and they like us. This movement is really cool. So, back to what I was saying. When I wasn't, when I said I didn't understand the concept of the clowns, that was my issue. It wasn't the music, because I always thought the music was brilliant. The writing that Joe Bruce does, he's one of the greatest geniuses of all time. That's the truth. There's a man that single handedly, no education, no father, started his own subculture. Think about that. It's insane. He's my brother. He's the guy that is a real stickler about everything because he wants perfection. We'd be like, what's wrong with him? But he knew. He knew it. We were. We did Flint. It was amazing that day in 1996. So, and until the same time, um, Rude Boy, Carlito, to all of these people involved that really have made the Dark Carnival what it is. And you're seeing it from the bottom starting up. To me, it's beautiful. I don't know what you guys think, but to me, I find it absolutely beautiful. But guys enjoyed the introduction to, we will get together next week. Hopefully our internet connection will be stronger because it does seem like it's been chopping out a little bit. Anybody still here? Let's give a shout out to Violent J. We pray for his continued healing. We pray for his journey. And yeah, our love goes out to Violent J with a big whoop whoop. Until next week, guys, until we catch you on the flip side, stay safe. Have Juggalo love for all of your brothers and sisters. And whoop whoop.